rains are coming down very heavy, and there are already reports of a lot of power outages.
There has never been so much weather, or so much media covering it.
We are dealing with the full brunt of this hurricane. I am right on Hollywood Beach here. There's not about 20 yards between me and the Atlantic Ocean here. We're right in the teeth of a very difficult situation right now. We've lost one of our cameras.
We have changed our position slightly. We are now bracing ourselves against one of the walls in our patio on our hotel because the
we are hooked on hurricanes, floods, storms, and worse.
We don't want to be hit.
Check. A major pylon just fell down.
Weather is now more popular than news, more compelling than drama.
We're trapped here. As you see around me, there are down power lines just about everywhere.
Averages all month. Roads were flooded, leaving cars.
We've always been interested in our own weather, but now we're interested in other people's weather. And the more violent, the better.
This is hitting somebody. Power flash, and I got that on video.
Movies about twisters and perfect storms are smash hits, along with home videos by storm chasers obsessed with the sky.
It's extreme. It's like Scariest Police Chases 3 on Fox. You know, it's an exciting thing. It's, wow, look at that tornado rip through that field.
I'll let you into a secret. Weather forecasters love talking about severe weather, extreme weather, something out of the ordinary.
Weather is the ultimate reality television. Forget Survivors and some of these other shows. That television is happening, it's real.
And it's not just North Americans that are hooked. The whole world is turning to weather for entertainment. How did we become so wild for weather?
The lake head, again, a drop will occur. See, tonight the low will be 35 instead of the 45 we heard this morning.
It all started with a meteorologist named Percy Saltzman, one of the first people to appear on Canadian TV when it went on air back in 1952.
We had a strong, powerful return flow deep from the south that brought 85s to this part of the prairies, even 80s up here. This will work its way over. So then, the forecast is...
Saltzman convinced the network that weather might make fun TV. His only gadget was a blackboard, but he became the world's first weather entertainer.
The idea of the map, the chalkboard, the chalk, was my own invention. Of course, there were no satellites then. And I started in black and white for many years, did it in black and white. Color came later. I think I put the color in television before they had color in television.
America's first weathermen were dry and scientific.
You want to shake fingers, Chich?
All right.
But Saltzman sensed that weather needed showmanship.
Hat full of rain that I spoke about.
Saltzman's trademark was to toss his chalk into the air. A small closing flourish that was the start of weather entertainment. Can you still throw that chalk?
You want me to try? And that's the weather. And that's the weather. I got it. And that's the weather. You see, with a little practice, perfect.
And that's the weather picture.
Now for something completely different. Here I go with highs and lows for another exciting weather show. Maps all drawn.
Within a few years, weather was becoming show business in many places, as TV weathermen abandoned the dry style of the BBC.
Well, after a few quite exciting days of weather,
and developed a breezier look.
It's not my fault.
Soon there was an upside-down weatherman in Australia, and costumed characters like Willard Scott in America. Then came weather girls, and weathermen who knew more about comedy than meteorology.
Your weekend's gonna be ruined, but it's not my fault.
But the forecast was still just filler between the news, until the early 80s, when weather became a full-time pastime.
Every hurricane, every season, the Weather Channel has a job to do for you.
The Starship Enterprise of weather is the Weather Channel in Atlanta, Georgia, selling the sky 24 hours a day.
Also looking at a lot of wet weather across the Gulf Coast of Florida.
This was the first place to realize weather was cheap programming, playing all the time.
Southeast of Minneapolis, so watch out around Rochester, Minnesota.
You just had to look up.
Right now, it's your local forecast.
The channel offers non-stop forecasts, along with mind-numbing data their viewers follow like sports fans do baseball statistics. But when it started, there were lots of skeptics, says Michael Lerner, a network vice president.
People laughed and people scoffed. I mean, they said, you know, not only who would watch all the time, but that it was boring and who could watch weather for more than a minute or two.
Next week on...
You know, advertisers would say, well, we don't understand who this would appeal to.
Can an oil slick stop a hurricane?
Today, 74 million Americans tune in each week, making this one of TV's most popular channels.
But there is some heavy rain northwest of Madison.
Part of weather's popularity is due to new technology that can predict short-term weather and sometimes get it right.
Interestingly, the Meso Eta by Zero Z has...
But much of weather's success is driven by passion. Almost half the channel's viewers are junkies who watch hours of weather each day, and the staff is part of the cult.
If you have an easterly flow here, how is it going to move like that? It's not.
Matt and Betsy Crowther are senior meteorologists here. When they aren't covering weather, they're following it on weekends.
Well, that storm's probably 50 miles away still. It's hard to say. There's another severe storm over here. It looks like a storm.
They chase hurricanes and tornadoes for fun and take home videos of their favorite storms.
Oh, God, look at this thing. Oh, my goodness, look at this. It's Mother Nature at its most unbridled. It's just kind of raw power. It's not controlled by man in any way, and I think that's kind of has an appeal. Look at the motion on that. Wow. It's just a kind of a, you know, fascination with the power of nature. And I think everybody kind of has that. Maybe it's some kind of primordial thing from back in the caveman days.
I want to let you know we also have another wall over here to our other side. We've seen it come down now at a rate of a half to 1 inch an hour.
The Weather Channel's ratings soar during any kind of violent weather. Producer Simon Temperton has covered natural disasters for the past 9 years.
I think people love to see other people in misery. You know, when there's a blizzard in the Northeast, our ratings are bigger in Florida than they are anywhere else because everyone from the Northeast has moved down to Florida and they can look at it and laugh at everybody going, hey, we moved from that, you know, look at how they're suffering.
Oh my God, there's a roof flying around. Oh, it's destroying somebody's house.
People are interested in disasters, whether it's an earthquake or a hurricane. It's people against the gods or against Mother Nature, and I guess the Weather Channel is just the weapon that we can put in your hands so you can be better prepared to go to battle against the forces of nature. How's that for drama?
Of all the forces of nature, none is as difficult to predict as the weather. And in today's global marketplace, an up-to-the-minute accurate forecast is an absolute necessity. Broadcasting to 100 major cities across 6 continents.
Other networks are also tapping into this growing desire to know all the weather everywhere.
CNN now takes global weather by storm.
The out cue is trust it alone, and that's should be about 25
Here at
seconds.
CNN, they've just created a new global weather team that delivers the weather to every continent.
Still maintaining something of a firm grasp through much of Finland.
Through the magic of a green weather board in their Atlanta studio.
Through central portions of the
As
Mediterranean.
we look at Africa, most of the moisture will be still concentrated
Calm
on the
conditions through Beijing and through the Indian subcontinent, northern regions at this point in time.
Their weather now rivals their news, says Chris Kramer, head of CNN International.
The most controversial part of CNN's output today is the weather. People might care passionately about the events in Kosovo, but on a day-to-day, ongoing business, everyone has their own views about how weather should be produced. People believe that having their city on our weather scroll is a demonstration of their import as an international community. I have a letter here from Melbourne. Why are you downgrading Melbourne, Australia? Why do you not believe we've arrived as an international community? Having your own weather on CNN is a real status symbol.
Once, young journalists made their names covering war on the beaches of Normandy. Now, you can make your name on Florida's Daytona Beach, covering the weather wars.
We are now in the southern eye wall of Hurricane Danny.
It is raining sideways. The winds are blowing over hurricane force. I can't even turn around. I mean, it's like somebody's hitting me with small stones in my face right now.
People kind of looking out the windows, but trying to get as close as they can to the windows. It was a good gust.
Some say our interest is due to the changing global climate, which is causing more chaotic weather at a time when global politics is calming down. Even political journalists are turning an eye to the politics of weather. David Plotz is Washington bureau chief for Slate Internet magazine. He says that with the decline of the Soviet Union, Americans have discovered a new adversary.
I think what's happened is with the end of the Cold War, there's a search for enemies. And Mother Nature is the biggest, baddest, nastiest villain that you can find. She's implacable, she's everywhere, and she just makes a great villain. We send out the weather forecasters. In the new war that we have, they function as our war correspondents. They're the ones who will go out and cover, our titanic struggle with nature and be brave enough to go do it.
Now with this due south wind that I'm in, the surge has got to be unbelievable. Failed me again. Rain is upon us, a west wind blowing.
Weather has become national entertainment, says Plotz, and it sometimes borders on storm porn. Hundreds of internet sites appeal to people eager to see violent weather anywhere, anytime.
Oh my God, it's a frozen cow. Oh God, that's horrible. Here we're seeing the worst possible aspects of Mother Nature. Mother Nature, her absolutely most vicious and cruel, and we get to sort of sit and kind of watch with gape-mouthed horror at it. There's a dark place in everyone's soul where they want to see disaster, and they want to see when bad things happen to other people. Not to people necessarily, when bad things happen to other people's houses. And weather delivers it with a wallop.
And some people don't want to watch from the comfort of home.
Hey, Bill, that's going crazy. Yes, it is.
Welcome to the latest vacation, storm tourism, for those who want to see bad weather up close.
It's still pretty high base. Nice ample, nice back shear.
These people paid $2,500 for a rainy vacation, or worse.
Are you folks interested in having your weather briefing this morning? Okay.
Dave Gold runs Silver Lining Tours, one of several groups chasing tornadoes and supercell storms across the U.S. Midwest.
The basic thing about today is that the moisture has failed to make it back in quantities sufficient for supercell storms. So
most people here are weather junkies, hoping to experience other people's weather they've only seen on TV.
I've been obsessed with severe storms since 6th grade, and in California, where I live, we get nothing there but sun, smog and fires and riots. And so every night for about maybe an hour and a half or so, I watch the Weather Channel to see where exactly the storms are going to hit.
I did hear the thunder earlier.
Basically, my hope on this trip, you know, to see something on the Weather Channel and then to be right in front of that area.
Hurricane winds.
On my TV, leaving the Weather Channel on is kind of standard procedure. If there's an alert or a tornado's taking something down, it's right on the TV. I like to see an F5 tornado, not be in it, just see it.
Many of them are from England, where the climate is rarely as dramatic as American weather they now see on TV. Andy Hughes is a bartender from Dorset, England.
The more severe weather, the better, whether it's hail, lightning, or the actual storm itself. Some people like golf, some people like chess, some people like to read novels. I like storms.
Mark Chatton is on tour for the second time.
I sort of eat and drink and live for weather. I'm a weather addict, really. I want to see severe thunderstorms, but also I just simply couldn't look at the sky in England and see a similar cloud or storm structure. I want to see something that's going to be unique, that I know whatever happens back home, I won't be able to see that.
The tour crosses 10 states, covering 700 miles a day in a quest for cloud.
Growing up, you know, it was very taboo to say you wanted to go see tornadoes. And I used to hide my secret desire for a big hurricane to come hit, you know, Galveston. Of course, that probably wouldn't be a good thing to, it wouldn't be a good thing to hope for now. But, you know, when I was a kid, I was always hoping for a really good severe storm.
They track storms using satellite data and more traditional technology.
Eastern Boyd, it's called East Boyd. Probably has heavy rain, maybe some small hail, but that doesn't mean that it can't become severe.
Columbia and Orlando. Pretty warm around Atlanta and Birmingham. A little cooler, 78 toward Dallas. Of course, there was 2 extra clouds with us.
Here in Nebraska, people take their weather seriously. This gas station plays the Weather Channel at every pump when you fill up. And you can watch as long as you pay. Everyone's a weather nut out here, and some use some pretty strange gadgets. Among the chasers are meteorologists Matt and Betsy Crowther, who've driven here from Atlanta for storm season. They've just bumped into Dave Gould's group and decided to join them for the day. But the sky won't cooperate with this growing convoy of weather addicts. It's been sunny and clear all day. Perfect for most vacationers, but not this gang, where everyone's hunting clouds.
And then you got north of here.
Right, you got more congested stuff.
It kind of looks like a semicircle.
This is where it's all feeding back around the northeast side of the Mesolo.
Yeah.
So we just.
So far, there's not much to film but each other. But with luck, there's rain out there somewhere.
Actually, that's probably on the range that's on the south side of Catherine.
Meanwhile, just down the road are 2 other cloud chasers who seem very excited about today's calm weather. Ed Verkuyk and his wife Jareen are sky artists who roam the U.S. and Canada. They've spent 17 years chasing rain clouds, drizzle, snow, fog, and anything else nature serves up. They're in love with any sky.
Deep down, we're weather nuts. We love all aspects of weather, and maybe that's because I like nature, I like the atmosphere, and so it doesn't matter all that much what the extremes are. The extremes are a highlight. They're like a treat, you know, that you get once in a while. But that isn't the thing that's motivating me to enjoy being out here.
When I met Ed, I knew I was getting the weather as part of the bargain, but I'm not sure I knew I was marrying the sky. You know, the marriage vows were sort of love, honor, and drive like crazy, too.
Ed and Jareen drive 100,000 kilometers a year and rarely look anywhere but up.
Rising towers, cumulus towers, something that indicates that...
They track the clouds with their naked eye, like sky detectives.
The lowest layer is blowing off towards the west, and above that there are two other layers, higher layers. One is turreting a little bit, these chunks of darker cloud.
Even the Weather Channel doesn't really follow the weather in the way that we do. They're not looking at the sky. They're looking at radar and satellite pics and...
Yeah. Don't you find that amazing? We're following weather in society by watching it on TV. And we're not watching the sky on TV. We're watching a bunch of graphics on TV and a bunch of people telling us what's going on somewhere. Well, it seems to me we've just stripped the life out of the subject, haven't we? What's that funny looking cloud in the background there?
Ed and Jareen have filmed clouds of every sort, and then some. To them, the sky is a huge gallery of sculptures, filled with majesty, mystery, and mysticism.
This is just around the block here. Look how gorgeous that is.
Wait a minute now.
The whole bottom half of the page.
Well, yes, that's true. That is quite nice, isn't it?
Ed and Jareen see something special in every cloud. And they've put out several best-selling books for other sky addicts who love any kind of weather.
Oh man, it's sousing out here.
It feels good.
Yeah, I think I'll just put this window up now, actually.
You know, this is gathering together a little bit down to the southwest.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think that...
Ed and Jareen also love a good tornado, but they're critical of society's obsession with extreme weather.
Violence isn't the key to what the sky is all about. Going just for the tornado is just a bit like going for easy sex. You want to have the time for the tenderness and for the foreplay, for all the other things that go into a relationship with sky, not just go for the big thing at the end of the road. I think it's part of this interest in disaster, apocalypse, anything to do with devastation, which is why there's been so much focus on severe weather and tornadoes and flooding and avalanches and all of the worst things that weather can do, and not very much attention on the glory and even the wonderful things that those nasty things accomplish.
It's sort of like saying there's really only one thing that matters out there today, and that's 2 minutes underneath a storm somewhere in the distance while something a violent wind is churning up the landscape. And I find that really sad. It might be almost immoral to think that way.
200 kilometers away, a severe weather warning has just been announced. As the sky darkens, the mood in the van brightens.
They haven't gotten bigger than before, but there's just more of them than we had before.
Big hailstorms often precede tornadoes, and they head right for the center.
Get some good lightning over here, too. Looks ragged to the left, but look a little to the right.
It's a severe storm, but will it become a tornado?
Get down, drop down, drop down. Nice. Come on. Come on.
Finally, the moment they've all been waiting for. Really bad weather.
This is the best storm we've seen this year except for Brady, Nebraska earlier. Look at the shape and look how laminar and round and the different colors, and it's just incredible.
Look at the edge on this.
Whoa.
The British are in weather nirvana.
Well, it's elliptical. It's just like a giant UFO. We've got lightning coming out of this thing all over the place. This is just awesome. It's great. I couldn't have hoped for anything better. If I don't see a tornado, this has made me happy. This is fabulous.
Fantastic. Beautifully structured supercell storm. Perfect backlit there. This is worth the trip on its own. It's worth twice the money on its own. It's absolutely gorgeous.
The only bonus, of course, would be a funnel, tornado. like right there. So
Matt is committed. So.
That would be great.
Two hours later, and our other storm chasers are still watching the show after chasing it on their own all day.
Do you think you want the 500 for some up detail then?
Yeah, I'll take a close look in so I can see what's
Here you go.
back out.
I'll kill the lights.
It's easy to see why ancient peoples thought storms were the work of the gods. But these days, they employ lots of other people, too.
Currently this hour along the lower Great Lakes of southern Ontario, winds
Canada, home of bad weather, where many people are obsessed with the sky from the comfort of their living room.
Hello everyone, you're watching C2C on the Weather Network. My name's Les Crittenden.
And I'm Kim McDonald.
Kim, we've got fine weather for Vancouver and Victoria today. Tomorrow,
24-hour-a-day weather started in the U.S., but soon spread to Canada, which now has 2 of the world's 3 weather channels, broadcasting in English and French. The network started in the late 80s and are now a huge success, drawing a third of the country's population, says marketing director Jim Davis.
Totals typically run between 8 and 9 million Canadians per week watch the Weather Network and our French network Meteo Media, and our spikes have been upwards of 11.5 to 12 million.
Miss Bert Gunderson of Winnipeg, Manitoba writes, on clear days, visibility for Winnipeg is listed as 24 kilometers.
Dave Phillips is the Canadian government's chief climatologist and Mr. Weather for much of the country's media. He says there are good reasons for why we've gone wild for weather.
I think when people say to themselves, gosh, there seems to be more wild weather now than when I was a kid, and that may be true, but what is clear, they're hearing and seeing more of it because it's coming to them on television programs and radio broadcasts and in newspapers, and we can't go 2 hours without needing a weather fix. I mean, this is, my gosh, we follow the wind chill factor like others follow the Dow Jones average.
Canadians have always paid close attention to their weather forecast, since it can be a matter of survival in this country. But recently, they're also starting to follow more live weather dramas.
Last few years, weather's been the #1 news story in Canada. 96, the Saguenay flood. 97, the Red River flood. These were #1 news stories in Canada that year.
The high winds are expected to last until at least Tuesday night. But the longer they persist, the greater the danger of a dike breach.
Winnipeg, stay tuned to the Weather Network from flood-ravaged Manitoba.
So weather is being #1 news stories more and more nowadays.
The tornado was whipping winds of 300 kilometers an hour.
Something that you see often in the United States, we're seeing more in Canada, where there's full news television coverage devoted to a weather event.
The country's most dramatic weather event was the Montreal ice storm, when freezing rain paralyzed the city for several days and literally turned Montreal into a freezer. As millions were left without heat or light for days, the rest of the country tuned into the weather war zone on TV, watching riveted as the damage and the ratings rose.
Towering trees were covered in a thick layer of ice. Beautiful to behold, but dangerous below, as branches snapped under the weight and littered the ground around them.
Quebec's TV networks offered non-stop live coverage. Anchorman Patrick de Belfoy of the Weather Network noticed a strange phenomenon.
50% of the population of Quebec was out of electricity, about 3 million people out of a 7 million population. Our ratings kept going up. We were really surprised. We're thinking, how can they get us? You know, they don't have television, they're out of electricity. How comes our ratings still go up?
I think that broadcasters find that weather in its total misery sells, and especially if it's a calamity where they can do human interest and do the drama of the weather office and people struggling against the elements. And they're finding that weather sells not only in Canada, but around the world.
These days, everyone has their eye on the sky.
Et que la France était belle, vue cet après-midi par le satellite.
For Victoria, it'll be fine apart from a bit of patchy rain in the northeast.
The weather now rivals the news in almost every country. Weather is so glamorous, it even has its own Oscars to choose the best weather presenters in the world. Forecasters from 90 countries now gather in Paris each year for the International Weather Awards. They win prizes for best weather reporting on each continent and for best forecasts. Organizer François Fondeux says every forecast is a window into a country's values.
Le bulletin météo est très représentatif de la culture du pays. Si on part de l'Europe du Nord, on va avoir un bulletin assez rigide.
Heute Nacht schneit es in Bayern und in Sachsen, sonst bleibt es trocken.
Yön ja seuraavan päivän aikana matalan keskus kulkee Etelä-Suomen ohi.
Si on tombe vers le sud, on va avoir un bulletin un peu plus extravagant, comme le sont les Italiens.
Il tempo sta cambiando, ma osserviamo le immagini del satellite.
Many forecasts are a mix of traditional customs and satellite technology.
Satellite image of the kingdom, belt of cloud extended all the way from Tabuk all the way to Kuwait. The rest of the kingdom were a lot of sunshine in that.
Dans les pays arabes, on remercie très souvent Dieu. Ça, c'est très culturel, et donc la religion s'intègre dedans.
Western Europe still doesn't do as much live reporting as North America, but they sure make up for it with lots of technology.
שעושים גם סופות רעמים, בעיקר בצפון. אתם רואים את הגוש הגדול הזה שנמצא עלינו ומוריד גשם עכשיו.
So I'm going to put on my protective eyeglasses. Okay, let's go crank it up.
And this would be as if it was a small tornado. If you can hear me, this is what it would be like.
Americans are the masters of weather gimmicks like this wind tunnel. But that doesn't always score well with European judges.
The winner is Frank Cavallero.
Awards are given out for all kinds of categories, but they don't have one for the country most obsessed with the weather, because it would go to the same place every year. Welcome to a country where everyone complains about the climate, England. And if you don't like today's weather, locals say you can wait 20 minutes and it will get worse. Britain's wet weather has always played an important role here, where it is a great social icebreaker that everyone gathers to grumble about together.
It's really interesting, sort of cultural difference. In Italy, people don't talk about the weather because they are continually talking about food. In England, we don't have time to talk about food, and there's no point because most of it's crap anyway. And anyway, we're always moaning about the weather, so...
We're English, so we don't have anything to talk about. We can't talk about our feelings or anything. It just has to be the weather.
Yet the weather here isn't really all that bad. A mix of rain, drizzle, and fog that's a long way from the savage hurricanes and blizzards of North America. But that doesn't stop the British from paying attention to every minute detail of their climate on one of the world's premier weather-watching networks, the BBC. The weather here has always outdrawn the news by a big margin, and everyone tunes in. They used to have a stodgy image, but they've recently revamped it with new computers and new style reporters like Helen Young.
Hi, Network.
Hello, hello, hello.
It's a new look, but still the same dreary old weather as always.
Hello. Well, this week is going to start as we left last week, really, on an unsettled note. We've also seen a lot of rain, grey and drizzly to start off with. We might find some fog lingering in the Vale of York with a little bit of nuisance raining, very light rain and drizzle. In Britain, I think we quite often complain about the weather. But it's not that bad, actually. And I think people that live outside the United Kingdom think our weather's worse than it actually is. Our weather's changeable in Britain. You get the mist, the murk, the rain, the wind, and then behind that weather front, as it clears through, you can go to sort of sunshine and showers, great visibility, but a completely different feel to the day. So you can really go through the whole spectrum of the weather in just 24 hours.
Continuous heavy rain falling
In fall of 2000, freak rainstorms and floods gave the country some really bad weather to complain about, and British TV provided wall-to-wall US-style live coverage.
If I'd been standing here 5 days ago, I'd have been completely underwater.
And when they run out of their own bad weather, the British tune in on other people's weather.
I mean, if there's a hurricane around across in America, or if there's a hurricane on the Eastern Pacific, or a typhoon, we love talking about it. I think we are obsessed about the weather. If two people meet at a bus stop and they don't know each other, you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to start talking about the weather.
In this climate-crazed nation, no one is more obsessed than Piers Corbyn, the country's quirkiest forecaster and a man who makes a living betting on bad weather. Corbyn is an eccentric astrophysicist who runs his own weather forecasting business called Weather Action. His office is a maze of weather charts and gadgets that supposedly help predict the weather months in advance, even though that's supposed to be impossible. But lots of people believe in him.
We can pinpoint extreme storms or heat waves up to 11 months ahead. Individuals might use it for straightforward wedding plans, stuff like that, but the main important clients are insurance industry and energy industry. Mostly they buy 30-day ahead forecasts. So this is the long-range forecast.
Corbyn's secret method is based on analyzing sunspots over the last 100 years. The only trouble is that no one can understand his theory but him.
It's based on predictable aspects of solar activity, including solar flares, things called coronal mass ejections, whereby bits of the solar corona break away and may...
If it's too complex for you to follow, the country's meteorologists feel the same way and dismiss Corbyn as a crank. They say no one can predict weather more than 5 days in advance. Among his critics is veteran forecaster Francis Wilson.
You can have fancy theories about solar winds are somehow disturbing the upper atmosphere and influence our weather long term because they're introducing particles that seed the clouds and da-da-da-da-da. But this is all just really somebody's speculation, somebody's, kind of like leap of imagination. It's impossible to forecast long term. You can't really bet on the weather and win, except if it's in the short term. I mean, horse sense tells me that you cannot bet on the weather.
I've been betting on the weather every month for about 12 years and make typically a few £100 a month.
He's not kidding. He even has his own bookie, Graham Sharp, who accepts a £600 weather wager from Corbyn every month.
24th to the 26th of October, which is now.
Yeah.
When it's quite mild outside.
Yeah.
According to you, it's going to be warmer.
On the 29th or 31st.
Well, I think you can say goodbye to that.
No,
You've got no chance of winning that.
You see.
Halloween will be freezing. That's an exclusive prediction from me. You can have for nothing.
We'll
it always
see.
is.
We'll see, mate.
That's a loser.
We'll see.
I must confess that he has given me some of the most accurate long-range gale and high wind forecasts that I've ever come across.
Hello?
They came to pass.
Whether by skill or luck, Corbyn has made news several times, including his prediction for 1998 flooding and for a white Christmas in 1999, which helped a friend win £100,000 while England froze.
Yes, he profited from other people's misfortune when their properties went crashing about their ears. Piers was jumping about celebrating. But that's the nature of the business, I'm afraid.
Corbyn's not the only person making money on bad weather.
10 men and a half!
Here in Chicago, many investors are actually buying weather too. They've always bet on wheat and soybeans that make or lose money when the weather changes. But now the weather itself is a stock. Since 1999, you can play the weather at a special online exchange where you bet on the monthly temperature. The market's vice president is Pat Barker.
Your opinion is going to be very hot in July in Chicago. You tell your broker that you would like to buy a contract that indicates that you believe it's going to be hotter than the market anticipates. If in fact at the end of July it is hotter than the market anticipates, you'll make money. If it's cooler, then you will not.
9 bet.
Weather has become a hot commodity, and for a glimpse into its future, there's one last place to go. The biggest event of the weather-watching calendar comes in September, during the annual U.S. hurricane season. The Super Bowl of weather. And the major American media have front row seats. 1999 promised to bring one of the biggest storms of the century, as satellite photos showed a big storm brewing 1,000 miles off Florida and heading toward land. Hurricane Floyd. The media frenzy grew faster than the storm, as reporters lined every rock on the coast, waiting for the sky to fall and giving pregame analysis.
All right, Bruce, the latest is things have not changed yet. The only thing changing is our wind.
So right now, everyone is just waiting for the storm. I guess it's a calm before the storm.
I think this is going to be one of the worst storms we've ever had.
Over 2 million residents were soon fleeing the coast, jamming highways in the largest evacuation in American history. Residents going one way, news teams the other. Within 2 days, Floyd was America's top story and spreading, as every network sent down correspondents to look for their own angle and their own ratings.
The storm is now picking up speed as it moves north and east along the coast of the United States. It is still packing.
Will come ashore sometime in the middle of the night in all of his frenzy.
La pluie, comme vous le voyez, tombe abondamment. Les gens fuient les rues.
Even Canada's weather network sent down Patrick de Bellefeuille for his first hurricane, reporting in French and English.
Hurricane Floyd is battering the coast of southern Carolina, as you can see right now. I might not be exactly where that hurricane's gonna hit, but trust me, I'm gonna be feeling it all through the night. I saw about 10 to 15 different camera crews. That's including, of course, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, the Weather Channel, all the big networks in the States. Floyd was so big, there was even a couple of crews from Europe. There was one crew from France and one crew from Germany.
In the end, the forecast proved wrong, and Floyd missed Florida, apart from some tidal waves that provided good pictures. So an army of reporters from a half-dozen countries went north in search of Floyd's wrath, and finally caught up with it in the Carolinas.
Hurricane Floyd was at its most furious. When the eye of the storm hit land near
Long-awaited, much feared Floyd blasted through the Carolinas early this morning.
Coming ashore, but a series of tidal waves.
Now, with the wind still kicking up, causing some problems, they're A few just trying to moments secure that ago, line. we lost the power here. I'm not able to see just exactly how far and how widespread it is.
Dumping a foot and a half of rain in a couple of hours.
If you can see it, it's back around the other way, and you can see it back in the hotel.
Floyd did plenty of damage, but much less than expected, and less than Hurricanes Andrew and Hugo. So the news became the lack of news.
Most residents did return, happy to clean up what little damage there was. The worst part of Hurricane Floyd was not the storm, but rather the evacuation leading up to it.
But Floyd still provided plenty of human drama for those who like to watch weather from indoors. And inland flooding in the days after the storm took 50 lives, making Floyd a major enough news event to ensure the next hurricane gets lots of coverage. Floyd had some winners in Chicago, where traders bet on how hard it would hit. Lumber prices soared with housing damage, though the smart money sold rising orange juice stocks the moment the storm missed Florida. The biggest winners were the media. The Weather Channel set an all-time record, and their internet site logged 23 million hits. Canada's Weather Network also had big ratings, and the staff says there'll be more live hurricane coverage in the future.
I think it was worth it a lot. I had a lot of feedbacks from the population on the street weeks after that saying, "Hey, I saw you were in a hurricane, you crazy guys, you." So, you know, more and more in the States, they put on air reality shows because that's what people want. I think that mentality is kind of across the border, and we do want reality shows. So also to be in the comfort of your living room, warm, sipping a little coffee, watching TV, and see a guy that's hanging on for his life in a storm, I think people like it in a certain sense.
It's good TV, putting Canadian journalists down there on the beaches of Florida. Weather sells, and people want more and more, and they just can't get enough of it. One of the inviting things about weather is that it is so all-powerful, and it can do things to property and to people that I think that we tend to be mesmerized by some of these things happening around the world.
So why does weather captivate us? Are we just voyeurs in an entertainment culture that's always searching for new villains? Or is our passion for weather a search for something more? A reminder of the power and unpredictability of nature. In a society so insulated from natural forces, we seek a small connection to them any way and anywhere we can.
More than 1 million people in Cambodia have now been affected by record flooding.
Bangladesh also subject to the monsoon, some 35,000 residents affected in one form or another.
For Good Friday is Good Friday. That's the weather. What, more? Have I lost a